What is up, Call of Duty fans? I'm Alan IHOLDSHIFT on a Frio. Good to see you back. Buenos dias a mis amigos de España. If you're joining in from Spain, always good to see you. We've got a lot to go over today. If you're just joining me again, what we do here is we recap everything that happened from the day before and what we look forward to the day coming up. You'll also notice when I pull up some team sheets that there will be a little prediction meter. That was our initial predictions on these teams back when we did our prediction video. So if you're new to these video series, that's what those numbers are. Before we get digging though, I do want to give one little brief apology as I had bad information. I was going off of a bad source when it came to saying that Midnight Esports qualified yesterday. They didn't after day 2. There was one small scenario where there could have been a very strange four-way tie for a 4-2 spot line. That wouldn't happen, as most of you know. But those situations and scenarios got me thinking about the scenarios that could potentially be happening for day number 4. And honestly, I feel like I'm Alan Turing trying to crack the Enigma in World War II because my brain feels like a pancake after trying to go through all the scenarios. I think we got most of them hammered in, but let's not delay anymore. Let's dig in and take a look at what happened after day 2 going into today. A very tight bunch in Pool A. 3 of them at 2 and 1, a number of them still in reach at the very bottom, all the way down to the 1 and 2 line. Those teams not out of it yet. In Pool B, Team Envy looking solid, but a very solid middle of the pack between Heretics, G2, Fact Revolution. The bottom also fighting to stay away from eliminations going into day 3. Over in Pool C, of course, Midnight Esports doing well. And again, a very central core in the middle, followed by Team Spacely and 100 Thieves kind of looking like the big superstars that we were hoping for, not playing well and trying to just stave off potential eliminations going into day 3. And then in Pool D, the Australians of Mindfreak were up top, but right on their heels were UIU and Evil Geniuses. MOVISTAR Riders fell down, and again, a pretty severe battle at the bottom as Red Reserve was potentially in a little bit of trouble. Of course, as we took a look at day number 3, this is what we have as we look all the way through. A couple of notes, as there is, of course, Midnight Esports qualifying for the Pro League. Congratulations to the purple and black of Midnight Esports. And at the bottom, a couple teams have been mathematically eliminated, including Nation of Power, Mazer Gaming, and Team Divine, based on the teams that are close to them that end up holding the tiebreaker against those teams. So those are 3 teams that are mathematically eliminated. Let's jump over into Pool A quickly, though, before we dive too far in. Again, Team Swing sitting at 3 and 1 with Enigma 6. It was a good day up top, but the big storyline that I want to hit on first is FaZe Clan Black. Again, they were near the very bottom, actually on the bottom at 1 and 2. They had to have a big day 3, and they would not disappoint with a 3-0 versus Team Divine. And then beyond that, a very stompy and very convincing 3-1 versus Reciprocity. So you look at FaZe Clan Black and you kind of wish that you would have had tighter scorelines against FaZe Clan, which has not done well, which is who we'll talk about next. FaZe Clan themselves, of course, starting the tournament off right with a 3-0, have not found a win since then. Did not look good versus Enigma 6, look worse against Project 18, look even worse, really, against Reciprocity. They threw away so many opportunities. And this big switch up, this role swap between Priesta going to SOG and Crowder going to the AR, specifically on the respawn modes, it didn't look like it was really quite there. It was a tough change. It's a tough change to make. Priesta had been playing very solid. Crowder had not. You need to switch something up in there, and Priesta would jump into the SOG, and he just played a couple of angles that you would have had a Maddox in. A couple of long angles on C side that a Maddox player was actually in front of him. You would have liked to see him get a little bit closer up to get that angle, but is what it is. This is what the pool looks like, and I want to hit mostly, again, on the scenarios that are at play. So Team Divine, as we mentioned, eliminated. Even if they beat FaZe Clan and finished 2 and 4, Project 18 would still be able to hold the tiebreaker, so they wouldn't be able to do anything there. There are honestly too many tiebreaker scenarios for the top 4 because there can be a situation where all 4 of them do draw up at a 4-2 scoreline, which would put things in a very interesting position. As you go and look at some of the other ones in the middle, though, the big news is for FaZe Black, safe from eliminations. They hold the 3-3 tiebreakers versus FaZe and Project 18, so they will not have a chance to be eliminated. Reciprocity also safe from elimination as they also hold at least the 3-3 tiebreaker versus FaZe Clan. So even if FaZe pops off and goes 3-3, Project 18 goes 3-3, Reciprocity holds the tiebreaker versus FaZe. That wouldn't bode well for them. So let's get into the elimination scenarios here. Project 18 could potentially be eliminated if they lose to Reciprocity and FaZe Clan wins out. This would put things at a record differential. FaZe Clan would be sitting at 3 and 3. Project 18 would be at 2 and 4. FaZe Clan, from their perspective though, they will be eliminated unless they win both games. Those are against Sween and Divine, and Project 18 loses to Reciprocity. So a couple of scenarios in there, but the big ones are as far as how to stave off eliminations. Project 18, if they will be eliminated if they lose to Reciprocity and FaZe wins out. On the opposite side, from FaZe Clan's perspective, they'll be eliminated unless they win both games and Project 18 loses. So tall task for FaZe Clan. Let's jump back to Pool B though and take a look at what's happening over there. Team Envy, of course, looking really solid at 4-0. The big storyline for me though goes down to Heretics and G2, both of them sitting at 4-1 and 3-1 respectively. And I gotta just talk about this squad first. Vamos Heretics, they look fantastico. My goodness, they have put on a show during this CWL Pro League qualifier. The very convincing scoreline versus Lightning Pandas. Turns out Lightning Pandas isn't very good. They start off 2-0 versus Envy and get reverse swept. Feels bad, man. And then they come back today and they take 2 3-0s versus teams they need to 3-0. The big storyline though is the simple fact that Heretics, they have to beat G2 to qualify. If they beat G2, they're in. That's the way it goes. It's the flip side for G2 as well, who's the next team that we're going to be looking at. It's the only matchup for Heretics, though, so they've got time to prepare. G2, though, as we look at their schedule, have 2 games to prepare for. Although, honestly, all they have to really worry about is that game versus the Heretics. Again, similar scorelines between these teams. A 3-0 versus Tainted Minds. Not as convincing of a game versus Team Envy and that 3-1 scoreline versus Fact Revolution, but this team's good. I really like watching them play a lot. They look really solid on paper, and they're showing up on the battlefield as well. But again, as we jump back over to the pool, I want to lay out some of the situations that we have in hand for what could potentially happen here in Pool B. Envy will qualify if they win a single game. The magic number for them is just to get to 5. It's actually the magic number for every team is just to get to 5, with one exception. Heretics qualify if they beat G2. G2 qualify if they beat Heretics, like I mentioned. Even if they split and they both end up at a 4-2 scoreline, the tiebreaker would favor G2 over Heretics. G2 would get in. Fact Revolution not in the conversation if they were to finish 4-2. But that being said, Fact Revolution, even though they cannot qualify, they are safe from elimination. Now in the bottom, this is where things get a little bit interesting because we could have a 3-way tie potentially for who would be out of this pool. So let's start things off with Tainted Minds, who would be safe if they defeat the Lightning Pandas. It would put them at 2-4, and they hold the tiebreaker versus what could potentially be the 2-4 of the Giant. They would be safe as long as they beat Lightning Pandas. However, Tainted Minds could be eliminated if the Lightning Pandas win out, which would put them at 2-4, and the Giants win. That would also put the Giants at 2-4, leaving Tainted Minds at 1-5. That's the only situation where Tainted Minds get eliminated. On the Giants' perspective, they are safe if they beat Team Envy and Tainted Minds lose to Lightning Pandas. The Giants would be at 2-4. Lightning Pandas would be potentially at 2-4 if they win out, but they hold the tiebreaker against Lightning Pandas. Tainted Minds would be 1-5 in that scenario. Giants would be eliminated, though, with a loss, and if Lightning Pandas win out, they would be 1-5. There would be no tiebreaker in play, and that would just spell the demise based on record alone. Now, from Lightning Pandas' perspectives, they would be safe if they win out and the Giants lose. They would be at 2-4. The other 2 teams would be at 1-5. They would be eliminated, though, if they lose to Tainted Minds, as that puts them to 1-5. Tainted Minds would be at 2-4. Not what you want to see. And of course, the tiebreaker, if it goes 1-5 for Giants, favors that of the Giants. Now, here's the thing. If all 3 teams finish 1-5, we would have a 3-way tiebreaker for elimination. And the scenario where that happens is if Lightning Pandas beats Tainted Minds and Giants lose to Envy. This is a very possible scenario, so if you're looking to note that one, write that one down, because that one very well could occur tomorrow, as, again, we don't anticipate Giants beating Envy, and the LP Tainted Mind games, who knows what's going to happen in that scenario. So those are your situations for what would possibly happen in Pool B. I want to fast forward and get to Pool C, though, and talk about what's happening here. Midnight Esports, of course, as we mentioned, qualified Mazer out of the running, and again, the matchups here were all over the place all day long. I want to, before we go too far into what happened there, I want to talk about Midnight Esports, because this just isn't a team that just happened to get a stroke of luck and they got themselves in the Pro League. This is a solid team. I would be willing to say that this team up against the likes of an Envy or a Heretics could put up a legitimate fight, if not take games. The 3-0 versus 100 Thieves was very convincing. Accelerate Gaming is not a bad team, and they won that one 3-2. Overtime, not a bad team, they win that one. And then a convincing performance against the Pittsburgh Knights, and another convincing performance, a very actually convincing performance today versus Team Spacely. I'm so excited this team's in the Pro League. Envoy and Llama God have looked insane. They trimmed off the fat, getting rid of Demise and Scoliosis from Vegas, and then Brack, Jet Li, and Parzelian have looked wild. They've looked really, really solid. SMG gameplay is good. AR gameplay is good. Rotations have been great. S&D has been phenomenal. It's really awesome to see this team play. I'm excited that they're in the Pro League. I can't wait to cover more of their action as we go along. Now back forward to the pool. As again, you see 100 Thieves somehow, some way is 3-2, and Pittsburgh Knights, which look to be in the number 2 slot, would have a bad day, and they'll be sitting at 2-2. I want to talk about this 100 Thieves squad, because how can we not? This team does not look good. They've got a lot of work to do. The SMG gameplay is essentially non-existent. They were down bad to Mazer. I'm talking more than bad. I'm talking like it was going to be a 3-0 for Mazer bad. The Mazer that hadn't won a map yet bad. They would pull out the reverse sweep by the thin of their teeth, to be completely honest. And then overtime esport, it was a sloppy game in general. The strike team was called in for 100 Thieves, and they barely won that map on Arsenal. There were a number of specialists being used simultaneously with one another, even situations where it's like, all right, we just wiped 4 people, let me pull out an Annihilator. It just kind of feels like 100 Thieves is playing a pickup game, like a pickup tens. It just does not feel like they're communicating and finding full value or efficiency. I don't know if there's just the fact that there's no synergy on this squad, but it doesn't look very solid. There's just absolutely no SMG presence. That would be my first go-to look if this team were to get through. But again, there's a lot of situations boding for how and if they get through. So let's talk about Pool C scenarios. Accelerate Gaming qualify if they beat 100 Thieves. They hold the tiebreaker versus Pittsburgh if they Pittsburgh Knights end up going 4-2. 100 Thieves will qualify though, God bless, if they beat Accelerate Gaming and the Pittsburgh Knights lose one of their 2 games. Pittsburgh holds the tiebreaker at 4-2 against 100 Thieves, but if they go 3-3, 100 Thieves then would be the team moving forward at a 4-2 scoreline with the tiebreaker over Accelerate. Now for the Pittsburgh Knights, they're not out of the conversation either for qualification. They need to win out though, and Accelerate Gaming would have to lose to 100 Thieves. Pittsburgh would hold the edge against 100 Thieves at a 4-2 scoreline, and Accelerate would then be 3-3. So there's possibilities of things going nutty. There's also the possibility if there is a 3-way tie at 4-2, this is the best way to lay it out. If it goes 4-2 between all 3 of them, Accelerate Gaming holds the tiebreaker against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh holds the tiebreaker against 100 Thieves. That's the only way that that works as far as how the 4-2s would go, is if you're trying to frame that in your mind that way. Let's look at the bottom of the pool, because Overtime and Spacely's squad, not quite out of the running as far as how things will go down there. Overtime are safe if they beat Mazer. They would be 3-3, and they would hold the tiebreaker against Spacely's 3-3. They would, though, be eliminated with a loss, and Spacely teams wins out. So that would be a 3-3 for Spacely, 2-4 for Overtime. So that's very possible. Things can definitely happen depending on how Mazer shows up. From Spacely's perspective, they could be safe if they win out and Overtime loses to Mazer. Unfortunately, though, they are eliminated with any single loss. Even if Overtime loses, the tiebreaker still favors them at 2-4. So if there's a 3-3 scenario or a 2-4 scenario between both those teams at the bottom, Overtime again has the tiebreaker over Spacely. So that's how Pool C wraps up. That one's a lot more easy to understand. Goodness, it feels like I'm, you know, speaking in colors when it comes to that. Let's jump over to Pool D though very quickly before we wrap things up here. Mindfreak again opening the door for UIU and Evil Geniuses to work their way in, and Red Reserve would give themselves just enough gas to possibly keep themselves out of the elimination conversation, but not quite. UIU I want to talk about first, a team that we have not seen yet on stream. A very solid map differential, to be completely honest, with that exception to Imperial. That 2-3 loss really hurts. You would love to have seen them boast themselves to a 4-0 scoreline looking at their opponents. They do have the hardest part of their schedule coming up. Their last 2 opponents are potentially what I would consider to be the best 2 opponents in this pool between Mindfreak and Evil Geniuses. So still some room to prove here for UIU. Red Reserve though, speaking of, we have to talk about them again today because they narrowly put themselves out of the running. Fortunately today, they showed up. Scraps went 16-0 on a control of Arsenal. It was flawless. It was insane. It was absolutely the craziest thing I think I've seen in Call of Duty in some time. They would win against Mindfreak 3-1, and they've got a very easy schedule, technically, to round things off. You can never say easy schedule with the big two when it comes to the British teams. Reciprocity and Red Reserve seem to have some kind of a curse when it comes to playing up against teams they should dominate, and they're not able to quite do it. So, Nation of Power and Riders coming up, and again, those games do have implications on them, a lot of them here in Pool D, as this has been the Wild West, I would say, of pools. Let's run through those very quickly. For Mindfreak, UIU, Evil Geniuses, 5 is the magic number. You hit that, you qualify. It's looking pretty good. If we see 4 and 2s, again, multiple tie scenarios. If we see 4 and 2s, we could potentially see 4 teams sitting at that, and we'd be looking at multiple tiebreaker scenarios. There's too much to talk about when it comes to that, so we'll just say that if there's 4 2s, we're dealing with some drama up top. I want to talk about eliminations in this pool. Red Reserve are safe if they win out. If they go 4 and 2, they're safe. Red Reserve could be eliminated, though, if they lose out and Imperial win. They would be 2 and 4, Imperial would be 3 and 3, and the Giants would hold the tiebreaker against Red Reserve because they play each other. MOVISTAR Riders, though, could potentially be safe from elimination with a win versus Red Reserve and Imperial lose to Evil Geniuses. Red Reserve would be 3-3, but Riders would have the tiebreaker. Imperial would then be 2 and 4, Riders would be safe. Very possible situation. And then as you look at the elimination stance for them, they eliminated with a loss versus Red Reserve and Imperial defeat Evil Geniuses. There would be a record differential there. Imperial, though, is looking at a much more stark picture. Not any real chance for them to be safe, completely at least. They would be eliminated with a loss to EG. Riders holds the tiebreaker if both of them end up sitting at 2 and 4. So that would go, obviously, MOVISTAR's way. Now, here's the thing. There's potential for a 4-way tie at 3 and 3, and I don't know what would happen here. I imagine we have some kind of a 4-way playoff, maybe. The way that that happens is if Evil Geniuses lose out, they play up against UIU and Imperial. They would have the 3-3 tiebreaker, though, versus Red Reserve and Riders, but they wouldn't hold it against Imperial. Red Reserve could finish at 3-3 if they split with a loss to Riders and a win versus Nation of Power. If that happens, they would hold the tiebreaker over Imperial. If MOVISTAR Riders ends up finishing 3-3, they would have to beat Red Reserve, in which case they would have the tiebreaker versus Red Reserve and Imperial. And then for the last one, Imperial, if they win versus Evil Geniuses, they would only have the tiebreaker versus Evil Geniuses. So again, big situations in Pool D as far as what could happen, not only at the top, but also at the bottom. Some of those a little bit more far-fetched than others, but you can't rule anybody out in this tournament series. Again, my brain is going to just completely shut down after this video is over. Hopefully that helps out a little bit as far as what the pools look like and what the situations are for tomorrow. There's a lot of things going on in there. I might just put this in a Google Doc so you guys can see it if you want to and just kind of follow along. That's probably what I'll do, actually, just to be kind to you guys. And some of these situations might not be 100% right. I honestly cannot 100% give you the guarantee stamp of approval. I haven't ran it through the labs with the scientists in Sweden to make sure that this is all correct. The German engineers are still working on it, so I don't know. But I want to wrap this one up. This has been a long video. I've been Shift, you've been you. If you enjoyed the video, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell to get notifications when we do upload these every single day again after these matches. So make sure you sit down with that coffee, get caught up. And until next time, hope that you keep holding it down. Later. Bye-bye.